When the 2012 cartoon of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles introduced Rahzar, the next logical thing would have been to introduce Tokka. Fans assumed that Fishface was going to be the one to go through a secondary mutation to become the new character. But the creative team behind the show had a different idea in mind. An idea that was closer to the origins of Tokka than anyone could have imagined. Join me today as I explore the story of Tokka, the fire-breathing, flying giant turtle. Tokka was part of a giant turtle race known as the Vorkathian. In reality, Tokka was one of a kind, but as it would be revealed shortly, Tokka was a hermaphrodite, which meant she was capable of self-reproduction. She was one of 6 great cosmic monsters of the universe. Because of how threatening Tokka was, the Utroms gave her a fragment of the black hole generator to defend. Tokka was living on the planet Magdamar, a name that translated to Planet of Ever-Burning Fire. If you're unfamiliar with the arc of the 4th season, the Turtles, April and Casey, traveled 6 months into the past with Professor Honeycutt to prevent the Triceratons from assembling the black hole generator, and as a result, save planet Earth. Honeycutt, the Fugitoid, knew that the last piece was in Magdamar, but when his ship, the Ulysses, reached the planet, they realized that the Triceratons were already there. To make things worse, they were attacked by Lord Dreg, who decided to make a deal with the Triceratons. He would give them the last piece in exchange for the 4 turtles and 40 million Zemulax. After the attack, the Ulysses crash-landed, forcing the group to separate from the Fugitoid. They would retrieve the missing piece while Fugitoid worked on repairing the ship. Magdamar was a hostile planet with a very dangerous surface of rocks and lava. It was while exploring the planet that Raphael found an egg that immediately hatched, revealing a space baby turtle. Raphael tried to let the baby turtle find its way, but after seeing how dangerous the planet could be, he decided to adopt it. After getting bitten by it, he named him Chompy Picasso. His last name was inspired by the prolific artist Pablo Picasso. It's interesting how Raphael kept using art as his inspiration to name others this season. The group found the missing piece of the black hole generator, not knowing that they were walking on Tokka. After hearing her baby make sounds, Tokka awakened, ready to defend the missing piece and her baby. After realizing Tokka was Chompy's mother, April gave him back to her. This didn't make things easier. The Triceratons were still attacking Tokka, trying to get their hands on the generator. The Turtles managed to remove it from Tokka's back, but the piece was stolen immediately by Lord Dreg. Seeing the piece getting away, Tokka chased Dreg to the Triceraton spaceship. To get rid of her, the Triceratons accelerated the death of a star, apparently killing her in a supernova. Everyone seemed to escape, including Chompy, who managed to attach himself to Raphael before Tokka went after the missing piece. As a result of this adventure, the Turtles had to come back to Earth to stop the Triceratons from turning it into a black hole, and Raphael kept Chompy as his new pet. Of course, Raphael saw in Chompy a replacement for the pet turtle he lost before. But Chompy wasn't a regular animal, and its presence in the lair brought an interesting question. Was Earth the right place for Chompy to grow in? Well, the answer was about to fall to Earth, as Tokka had survived the supernova and was coming to get her baby back. Taking responsibility for the situation, the Turtles and Casey infiltrated TCRI, which was then in the hands of the EPF and the Utrom known as Agent Bishop, to steal a stealth ship to deliver the baby to Tokka. But this wouldn't be a kaiju story without the military misinterpreting the intentions of Tokka. It turned out that Bishop's authority wasn't as strong as he expected, and the military took on a mission of taking down Tokka, despite Bishop's warnings. It all came down to Raphael, who opened up to Tokka, demonstrating with his gestures that he didn't mean to separate them. In fact, Tokka observed how Chompy acted next to Raphael and understood that he worked as a foster parent for her baby. Raphael gave Chompy back to Tokka, and as she was leaving, she realized she couldn't separate Chompy and Raphael, so she came back and gave him back to Raph. She then left the planet. Raphael was happy, but he knew that Chompy wouldn't be able to stay on the planet forever, and that someday it would return to the stars. Until then, he would be his companion. Unfortunately, after the explosion of the mutagen bomb, Raphael would lose track of Mikey, Leo, and Chompy. He even almost lost Donatello as well. 50 years later, Raphael would find out that Chompy was still alive and living with Michelangelo. Chompy had grown considerably, but he was still unable to fly like Tokka. I mentioned earlier that turning Tokka into a giant kaiju was a bold move from the creative team behind the show. And to be fair, a move that had its origins in the Mirage years. The original Tokka was created for the Secret of the Ooze, but he was based on a toy concept design from Stephen Bissett and Steve Murphy, Terrapin from Aqua X. Terrapin was later adapted into the pages of TMNT Volume 2 as a giant turtle living underground, which, in retrospect, is the most obvious inspiration for the 2012 Tokka. According to legend, Ciro Nieli found out about Terrapin thanks to the art of the real-life Tokka during a Comic-Con. Ciro was intrigued by the secret origin of the character, but this alone wasn't the only trigger for the kaiju adaptation. And it all comes down to Chompy. Nickelodeon suggested introducing a fifth space turtle with superpowers to the creative team, but still feeling the absence of Spike, the team decided to give Raph a new pet turtle. For a while, they considered introducing Terrapin's sidekick, Snappy Warhol. The team eventually settled on creating Chompy Picasso instead. Still, you can see how they took inspiration from the concept design that evolved into the original Tokka. Of course, it's time to acknowledge the kaiju in the room. This Tokka design appears to be heavily inspired by Gamera, the giant, flying, fire-breathing turtle kaiju. Gamera was created in 1965 to compete with Toho's Godzilla. But unlike Godzilla, Gamera had a more positive view of humans, children, and nature. That franchise eventually referenced the black tortoise, one of the 4 symbols of the Chinese constellations in East Asian mythology, which reminds me of the 6 great cosmic monsters. The new Tokka was introduced by John Shirley in The Ever-Burning Fire, and while she is referred to as female, according to showrunner Brandon Auman, Tokka is a hermaphrodite. As a result, while she was a mother, she wasn't always a she. As far as I know, this version of Tokka never got an action figure, but Chompy just got his, as an accessory on NECA's release of 2012 Raphael. This version of Tokka ultimately served as a plot device for introducing Chompy. After Spike turned into Slash, the creative team had a continuous stream of requests from fans to fill the void he left behind. In a way, it was a very emotional journey for Raph, who had to give up on Spike once he became a sentient being, only to be rewarded by the universe with Chompy a few years later. To me, this is one of Raphael's more relatable personality traits of the 2012 show. But what do you think of the creative team separating Tokka and Rahzar for this iteration? Do you think Tokka was more Terrapin than Tokka? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching. See you in the sewers.